Good afternoon. Welcome to the Diesel Technology Forum's webinar, Want to Save Money? Buy a Diesel Car. During the presentation today, all participants will be in the listen-only mode. As a reminder, this event is being recorded. The recorded webinar, the presentation, and a short survey will be emailed to you shortly after the live webinar today. To ask a question at any time during the presentation, please submit the questions via the Q&A box. We encourage you to ask a question at any time during the presentation, and your questions will not be viewable by other attendees, and we will address them during the Q&A at the end of the session. I'd like to now turn the presentation over to your moderator today, the Diesel Technology Forum's Executive Director, Alan Schaefer. Alan?
Great. Thanks very much, Kristen, and good afternoon to everybody. Appreciate you being with us today, and we are delighted to talk about one of our favorite topics here at the Diesel Technology Forum, and that is the great things happening in the world of light-duty clean diesel cars. A quick word about the DTF. Hopefully many of you have heard of us already. We are a nonprofit educational organization that works to educate folks about the benefits of diesel and how it fits in both today's energy and environment, climate, as well as tomorrow's. We represent the leaders in clean diesel technology, and as you can see from this slide, those are those companies. So thank you very much to all of them for their ongoing support and leadership. We work in 4 different areas primarily. One of those we're doing today, which is education and outreach, actually 2 of the areas. We also commission research and also collaborate with other groups and non-governmental organizations on a variety of different programs. So we will talk about some of our other upcoming programs here in just a moment. One of those is coming up in a few weeks, September 23rd. It will be another session on light-duty diesel vehicles. This one will present some new research findings that look at the benefits both to the consumer and to society in the terms of fuel savings and emission reductions from choosing to own and operate a new diesel car or truck. So we hope you might be able to join us for that one as well, and we'll look forward to that on September 23rd at noon Eastern Time. And we have a few other upcoming sessions. These are not automotive oriented specifically, but they cover a range of issues that we cover at the Diesel Technology Forum, including power generation, goods movement, commercial trucking, as well as on and off-road engine technology. So if you're interested in any one of those areas, stay tuned. We'll be having some additional sessions this fall in that space. With that, let me walk right into our subject of discussion today, and that is the opportunity for more diesel car, trucks, and SUVs to make their way onto America's roads and highways. Today we have about 39 choices of diesel cars, pickup trucks, SUVs, vans, and according to manufacturers' projections, we see that number rising to about 54 in 2016, and then even more in 2017 as a few announcements have been made of new products. So it's an exciting time to be thinking about owning and operating a clean diesel car. And often in the course of doing that, folks want to understand the math behind that. Why is a diesel car a good choice for any particular consumer? And we are delighted today to have with us one of the nation's foremost authorities on this topic, Bruce Belzowski, and Bruce is the Managing Director of the University of Michigan Transportation Research Institute's Automotive Futures Group. And Bruce has received his bachelor's degree from University of California, Berkeley, and a master's from the University of Michigan prior to joining UMTRI. And he has worked for the UMTRI's University of Michigan's Institute for Social Research and for R.L. Polk, where he was responsible for developing models of new car purchases and aftermarket spending. And he joined Automotive Futures as a research associate in the former Industry Structure Group in 1994. Bruce is well known within the automotive industry and certainly in and around Detroit. So Bruce, thank you so much for being with us today. And I want to turn it over to you right now to talk about your new research looking at the total cost of ownership.
Thanks, Alan. So we're started today to talk about the results from our recent study called the Total Cost of Ownership, a diesel versus gas comparison. And we have the dates 2012 and 2013 in the title. And that's because for the 30,000 or so vehicles that we pulled from the Mannheim auction folks. The data that we got from them was through their auctions that took place in 2012 and 2013. This study differentiates the one that we did a couple of years ago that looked at 2010 and 2011 data using pretty much the same analytic techniques that you'll be seeing today. So when you look at the growth of alternative fuels and technologies, you can see that diesels, just looking from 2013 to 2014, diesels have grown slightly, hybrids went down a little bit, pure electrics went up very little, and compressed natural gas actually went down. So, but when you look at these from the perspective of the internal combustion engine and spark-ignited engines, these are really relatively small numbers in terms of where we are today, in terms of but also the opportunity that is available for diesels, electrics, hybrids, and compressed natural gas. So there's a lot of room for growth here. So what we did is, Alan was talking about the number of models that have diesels. I guess you have to keep that in comparison that in 2014 there were 381 models available. We had it at 124 models offered alternative powertrains, and that includes hybrids and CNGs and any other varieties that the manufacturers have. So it represents about 33%. But from, as I said, this previous study that we looked at based on the 2010-2011 data, that at that point was only 11%. So in a very short time, it's more than doubled. Of course, when you start from a low base, it's a little easier to do that. We have to keep that in mind, but it definitely shows a growth pattern. We also saw that purchase intention reported that consumers considered hybrids 46%, clean diesels 19%, as their first and second choices for their next purchase. That came out of a Morepace research that they did in late of 2014. But as we know on the previous slide, this has not translated directly into sales, or at least not a lot of sales. So when we looked at the project overall, the goal was to objectively measure the value in terms of money of comparable gas and diesel light and medium duty vehicles over 3 and 5 years ownership period, and that we call the total cost of ownership. We're not the only ones who talk about total cost of ownership. I think probably Edmunds has it, Kelley Blue Book has it, and a number of other places I've seen offer this same type of analysis. We did ours a little differently. We didn't include some of the things that some of the other folks include, but we tried to get the main things that are part of ownership, which is vehicle depreciation, fuel costs, insurance, licensing and fees, maintenance, and repairs. And for this particular model, this total cost of ownership model, we developed our own models for resale value and depreciation as well as fuel costs. And for the future estimates for comparable gas and diesel vehicle costs, those were generated by a company called Vincentric. So the data sources that we're using, as I said, we used Mannheim auction data to estimate the vehicle resale value and the depreciation, and Black Book data for the original MSRP. So we had we had 28,000 vehicles. The model years were from the auction was 2000 to 2013. The Energy Information Administration, we used their data for the annual fuel cost estimates. We used the Department of Transportation vehicle survival rates and their annual miles driven as part of our analyses, and the EPA vehicle miles per gallon to measure fuel cost. And as I said, Vincentric for taxes and fees, insurance, repairs, and maintenance. The equation is pretty straightforward. For our depreciation, we subtracted MSRP from resale value. So both of these variables that we used in depreciation, we consider conservative values. If you look at MSRP, very few people actually pay MSRP for a vehicle. So it's a bit of an inflated number. So we consider that a conservative estimate. And the resale value is the value that the vehicle sold at auction. And we know that dealers buy at auction, and dealers are not going to buy a vehicle that they can't sell for a profit. So they're not going to buy a vehicle that's going to sell for less than what they paid for it. So we can also consider this a conservative estimate. So our depreciation estimate we consider pretty conservative. And then we add fuel costs to that. We do that. We accumulate that over time based on what the cost of fuel was on the average cost of fuel for that year, fees and taxes, insurance, maintenance, repairs, and we just total those. We take all the values and that from MSRP, from resale value, fuel costs, and we put those in 2013 dollars. So we're adjusting for inflation using the Consumer Price Index for used vehicles. We're assuming 15,000 miles driven per year for our model. Again, that's based on Department of Transportation estimates. And the estimates are for at 3 years, 45,000 miles, and for 5 years, 75,000 miles. So this is the vehicle pairs. So we looked at an Audi A3 gas version and an Audi A3 diesel version. Same with so we have passenger cars, and you'll see these in the slides that are coming up. We've grouped the results into passenger cars, SUVs, and medium-duty pickups. So you'll see that this will be a continuing theme as we go through the results. What is noticeable is that there are very few, actually non-European passenger cars that are diesels in our analyses. As we'll talk about later, and as Alan alluded to earlier, that there are a lot of vehicles that are coming into play that are from the U.S. manufacturers, and even eventually, I think Mazda with their diesel vehicle will show up. But these vehicles have to go through the auction market for us to become part of our study. So it not only it takes a while for them to hit the marketplace, and then it takes a few more years to actually go into the auction place and then to get into our data set, and then to actually have enough vehicles for us to be able to do what we consider a statistically significant analysis. So we're always going to be a little bit behind in terms of what's actually in the marketplace today. So this slide looks at the vehicle sample. Our goal was to have about 1,200 vehicles in both gas and diesel. As you can see, we didn't quite make that based on the differences you'll see. You can see in the heights of the bars on this graph. Passenger cars, we did a little better in the gasoline than we had in the diesel, except for the Jetta. For the SUVs, again, more gas than diesel, but we got some pretty decent. We always had a good enough sample to do an analysis, but our goal was to get about 1,200 if we could. And for some of these vehicles, there are many of them in the marketplace, so it really wasn't too big of a problem to get that number. But as you can see in the medium-duty pickup trucks, we actually had to sample. Use a sampling technique to try to just pull only 1,200 because there were more than that many available in the data set. Okay. In terms of miles per gallon, this is something that as we expected. The diesel vehicles get better miles per gallon, and if they didn't, we would be really surprised. It's just a matter of how much better than the gasoline version do the diesel models get in terms of fuel economy. And it's a range. In passenger cars, you're looking at 29% up to about 48%, and SUVs about 24% up to about 38%. But when you look at the medium-duty trucks, there's not too much difference, 15% to 17%, and it shows you these type of vehicles are really work trucks that use a lot of power and require that the vehicles do everything that the owners want them to do, and usually because they're work trucks, they're used in pretty strenuous situations, and therefore they're not getting a good fuel economy. And as you can see, they're the worst out of the vehicles that we have in the study. And in terms of MSRP, we were, if you think about it, intuitively you'd say, well, there's always a diesel premium, so you have to, diesel prices are always going to be higher. And that's pretty much the case, except for, when you look at passenger cars, you have the E-Class, where it's about even. But in the other vehicles, there's a difference. Diesel's, again, a variety of prices. Only 1% for the 3 Series, 2% for the Passat, difference between gas and diesel. But then you look at some of the others, and you're looking at about a 24 range of 6% up to 24%. In SUVs, we have 2 of the vehicles actually are less expensive in the diesel version, the X5 and the GL class, and the compared to the others in the range from about 10% to 19%. We're a little more expensive for diesel. And when you look at the medium-duty trucks, the diesels are pretty consistently a little more expensive, ranging from 24 to 32%. I'm not surprised by these results because we got these types of results in the previous study, but we'll talk about this towards the end of the presentation about this kind of has to do with why these few vehicles are actually at par, or diesel versions are actually cheaper, and it tends to do with the being a luxury brand. The next slide looks at the analysis for the resale value using the auction data. And here you're on the left-hand side, we have the sale price at auction in 2013 dollars. On the bottom row, we have mileage divided by 15,000 to get us the number of years. So the 0 through 10 is the number of years old that the vehicle is. You can see a line in the through the 3 and through the 5. That's the 3-year and 5-year estimates. And where those lines hit those 3 trim levels, we have a low trim, medium, and high trim levels. And here we were looking at the GMC Sierra 2500, the gasoline version. That is the estimate for that particular vehicle. So what we did for that trim, and what we did with the trim level then, is do a weighted average. So we took how many high trims, mediums, and low trims, multiplied that by their value, and averaged that over the 3, and came up with one number for the auction or the resale price for that vehicle. This is something we did differently from the previous study, and that makes it a little different. We were seeing that when we were coding all the MSRPs, that there were a pretty good variety of trim levels, and trim level can have a pretty dramatic effect on the vehicles. When we look at the vehicle prices, what we ended up, when we kind of looked at all the weighted averages for all these, we see it was only about, it varied by vehicle, but it was in the hundreds, not thousands of dollars differences based on the trim level. So that's the resale price. If you look at the resale price in over at the 3-year point, so we have here we have the passenger cars, SUVs, and medium-duty trucks. You can see at 3 years, again, a wide variety of advantages for diesel, ranging from about a 6% for the 3 Series up to almost 52% for the Jetta over the gas version. But the E-Class, in terms of its auction value, the difference between gas and diesel, pretty consistent, as we saw in the MSRP, that it was almost flat. If you look at SUVs, again, a wide variety of big differences. So what we see here is manufacturers making decisions about pricing. and how they're going to price these vehicles. And there are things that play into that, of course, is the experience they have with diesels. If they're using diesels in Europe, they've been able to get their costs back in R&D and development costs for these diesels, because they've made so many of them globally. So maybe they feel that they can price them that way. One of the other reasons that we hypothesize is that the luxury manufacturers have an incentive to actually push diesels into the marketplace. So one of the ways you do that is by keeping the price equal or less than the gas version. And finally, the last issue that could be in play here is that the luxury manufacturers need the credits for CAFE credits to avoid paying fines. Traditionally, the luxury brands tended to just pay the fines. But going out to 2025, I think, and this is something that we still need to do a little more work on, my understanding is that the fines actually will be increased, so that if you don't meet the goals for your vehicles in the 2025 timeframe, it'll be more expensive than it is today. And I don't have a data source for that. People have been telling me that, so I need to do a little more work to see whether that's true or not. But in terms of medium-duty pickup trucks, you can see the difference between gas and the resale value is significant, at consistently 60% or more higher for the diesel version than for the gas version. In 3 years of ownership. In 5 years of ownership, you can see that the things in the passenger cars, again, a big range, 9% for the E-Class, up to 116% for the Jetta, where the diesel is less expensive, or it's valued more. It's actually it's more expensive, but it's in terms of its resale value. It's higher for the diesel version than the gas version. Again, another wide range in the SUVs, ranging from 27% up to 96% for the Touareg, and for the medium-duty pickup trucks, again, a very high differential between the gas and diesel, with ranging from 72 to 81%. Again, the resale auction value at 5 years. Now, this is one of the variables in total cost of ownership, and that's what we'll see as part of the equation, right? So depreciation is the subtraction of the MSRP minus the resale value. So if you look at that at 3 years, the depreciation here, it says that, and here you want these values to be lower. You want less depreciation for your vehicle. So in this case, in the passenger cars, there are 2 vehicles where the diesel version depreciates more than the gas version in the E-Class and the Golf. But the others range from 6% up to 33% for in terms of less depreciation of the diesel version compared to the gas version. In SUVs, again, a range from about 3% to about 18% advantage for the diesel version, and for the medium-duty pickup trucks, a range from 5% to 27%. This is over the 3-year period of time. So the depreciation is the variable, the subtraction of MSRP from resale value for depreciation, and that's what's entered into the final equation, the TCO final equation. And then looking at the 5-year period, we have the Golf is the outlier, where the diesel version actually has less value and a higher depreciation at 5 years. But the other passenger cars range from 5% to about 26%. In SUVs, diesel is, again, a range, but a positive view for diesel at 8% to 39%, and in medium-duty pickup trucks, previous analysis where the F-250 had some powertrain problems and got a pretty bad reputation, and that affected its resale value. So the vehicles that fall into the 5-year period time frame, still some of those are left over. We saw in the 3-year period that that was not true for the F-250, that the diesel version had better depreciation. But at 5 years, we still have some of those older models that where the reputation of the powertrain is a problem. So, but the others ranging from pretty steadily from 8 to 11% in 5 years for depreciation. Fuel cost. What do we expect? Well, we expect diesel to have better fuel costs, and in this case, lower fuel costs over a 3-year period of time. In passenger cars, you're looking at 16% up to 27%. In SUVs, ranging from 12% up to 23%. In medium-duty trucks, again, as I talked about earlier, these are very powerful engines that use a lot of fuel. They use both a lot of gasoline and diesel fuel, ranging from 4% to 8%. Still an advantage for diesel in the 3-year time frame. At the 5-year time frame, again, passenger cars ranging from 16% to 27%, SUVs from looks like 12% to about 23%, and in medium-duty pickup trucks from 4% to 8%. Again, all an advantage for diesel fuel, as we expected. I mean, we expected the cost of fuel, even though during this period of time, the cost of diesel was more expensive than gasoline. It's a little different right now, but we're looking back during this period. Even with that, the fuel economy that they are able to generate from the diesel engine overcomes the cost of the cost of the fuel. Looking at the VIN-centric data, and here we've combined the costs for insurance, fees and taxes, maintenance, and repairs. And here it's more of a not as a positive view for diesel. VIN-centric tends to see diesels as having a negative, I guess you could call it a negative premium for negative values for passenger cars. It's ranging from 1% to up to 10%. For SUVs, 2% to about 7%. Though the GL class still has they see that one as having an advantage for the cost for these items to be less than in diesel than it is for gasoline. And for the medium-duty pickup trucks, diesel has a disadvantage ranging from 5% to 12%. So you can see that, well, this is at 3 years, and let's look at again at 5 years. Similar pattern. You have the Audi A3 having where diesel has a bit of an advantage, but it's negligible. You're at 1%. But then there's a bit of an extra charge for diesel for the other passenger cars, ranging from 2% to 11%, and SUVs from 2% to 6%, with again the GL class having where diesel's being a little less expensive in terms of the VIN-centric data. And then in the medium-duty trucks, the ranging from 5% to 12% for the advantage for the it's an advantage for the gasoline versions over the diesel versions. So you see that if you look at the components that we just went over here, when you think about the equation, you'd say, well, it looks like diesel is going to have an advantage, and in some of the things, VIN-centric is going to be a negative. You probably shouldn't be too surprised when you look at some of these results. So when you combine depreciation, fuel, repairs, fees and taxes, insurance, and maintenance, we look at here we're looking at the 3-year time frame. And I'm going to show a chart at the end of this presentation that puts all these numbers on one chart, one for passenger cars, one for SUVs, one for medium-duty pickups, so you'll be able to see that a little better. But this is showing you the differentiation between gas and diesel for a 3-year period, so that, for example, the A3 has almost, over a 3-year period of time, almost a $5,000 difference in terms of total cost of ownership. The 3 Series about $2,300, and the E-Class about $1,000. Remember that this has to do with some of the pricing issues that the E-Class has. The Golf is one of the negatives for diesel. The cost of owning a Golf in 3 years is more expensive for a diesel than for the gas version. But for the Jetta, it's about almost $2,700 less expensive for the diesel version, and for the Sport Wagon about almost $1,600, and the Passat is extremely different, at about almost $7,300 over a 3-year period of time. And as you look at the bars and where those differences are, you can see that it's the depreciation and the fuel costs that have the big effects for the Passat diesel. And again, in 3 years. And then in the SUVs, the Q7 at about a $900 advantage for diesel over 3 years. The X5, almost $7,000. Again, this has a lot to do with how the manufacturers are pricing their vehicles, and then the effect of the depreciation of the vehicles. The GL class, again, very similar to the X5, almost $7,000 advantage for diesels in over a 3-year period of time. In terms of SUVs, the M-Class, about a $3,500 difference in advantage. The Touareg, about $4,400. In the medium-duty pickup trucks, you can see differences. $4,200 is very different from the $1,300 for the F-250. The Ram at about $2,300. Again, these are the medium duty, so they're the 2500s, the 250s, rather than the 150s and the 1500 Rams and Sierras and Silverados. Sierra at about $3,400. So you can see that there's some differences among these different medium-duty pickup trucks in terms of the value of diesel, but it's always a positive one. All right, let's look at 5 years. So things actually get better. This isn't always the case. You know, we thought that this, you know, should this be kind of additive? Should if you look at 5 years, if you save so much money at 3 years, you save even more over a 5-year period. And it's usually the case, but not always the case. The A3 at a 5800, 3 Series at 4300, and the E-Class moving from about 1,000 now up to about 3,700 or 3,600. Passenger cars continued. The Golf being the outlier here, where actually having a diesel Golf costs you an extra $2,000 over a 5-year period. But the Jetta 4300, Sport Wagon 1100, actually that's down from 3 years, and the Passat at 76, almost 7700, is very similar to the 3-year period time period. So even at the value is, you can actually gather the value at 3 years. You don't have to wait for 5 years to actually get a very good return. In terms of SUVs, the Q7 is a 3,100, and here's the crazy numbers: the X5 at $19,000 less. And you can see the differences from the bars. It's the depreciation of the vehicles of the diesel version is so much less than the gas version. Same for the GL class. A lot of this has to do with pricing of from the manufacturer side to start with. The SUVs, because we always thought that there's a higher cost for SUVs. Well, I mean for diesels. If the higher cost is not there, that's really an advantage for diesel compared to the gas version. It shows up in some of these numbers. Again, the M-Class at about 4,200 and the Touareg about 5,700 advantage of diesel over 5 years. Again, then in the medium-duty pickup trucks, as we saw in the chart, the earlier chart, we saw that there was going to be a problem with the F-250, and at 5 years, it's still it's more of an advantage to have the gas version than the diesel version for the F-250 because of the historical problems that we think it's because of the historical problems that they had with some of the drivetrains there. But as we saw in 3 years, that was still a positive thing. So the 3-year versions are much newer, and they're so they have and the engine problems that had in the past have been fixed, and so we're seeing the depreciation hold up a little better in the 3 years rather than in 5 years. But for the 5-year period here for the medium-duty pickups, numbers are a little lower than probably what we saw in 3 years, but still an advantage for diesel. 1,800 for the Silverado, 2,300 for the Ram, and about $950 for the Sierra. So this is the chart for the passenger cars. And here we have the Golf as the outlier, and the list of the others that we already have gone through that show you that the diesel version has how big the advantage is in the diesel version over the gas version. For the SUVs, everybody's positive for diesel, but some are extremely positive. Again, having to do with pricing, manufacturer pricing for the MSRP, and as we just talked about the Ford F-250 at 5 years as the anomaly for the advantage for diesel gas. So there's the conclusions that we draw from this, as you can tell just from reading through these results, that the increase in diesels and other models, it continues to grow, though it's growing very slowly. But since the 2010 and 2011 study that we did, there's been the introduction of the diesel versions of the Audi A6, the A7, the A8, the Q5, the BMW 3, 5, 7 series, and the X3, the Chevy Cruze, the Ford Transit, the Jeep Grand Cherokee, and some of these, they're not all these. The Cruze is a high-volume vehicle, so is the Cherokee, and probably Volkswagen wishes that the Beetle was a high-volume vehicle in the U.S., but it's not. But these are, it's not all luxury brands. It's a combination of luxury brands, and we have the introduction of these diesels into the U.S. From the U.S. manufacturers. And also, on top of that, we've got these recent announcements of diesel versions for the A4, the Colorado, the Canyon, the Mazda 6, the Mercedes C-Class, the Nissan Titan, the Porsche Macan, and the Range Rover. So there's a lot of activity, as Alan mentioned, and as I showed earlier, so that there's stuff for us to look at into the future. And this is the issue that we were looking at about the different pricing strategies for similar vehicles, and why there might be differences. And as I said, that may be because the manufacturers have matured their processes for developing and manufacturing diesel engines, lowering their cost, and allows them to actually charge less for the diesels than maybe some of the other manufacturers. This may also be because the diesel engine is a global commodity, and its cost can be spread across many more markets, again, lowering their costs. And some companies may be urging the adoption of diesel vehicles in order, as I said, to improve their fuel economy ratings and meet their CAFE requirements. So finally, the diesel engines tend to hold their value despite their higher initial purchase price, providing buyers with, on average, probably $4,000 to $5,000 savings over the gas versions of the same models. And I think that's all I have for today. Very interested to hear any questions you guys might have.
Great. Thank you very much, Bruce. Appreciate that. We do have a number of questions have kind of rolled in through the chat segment. I just want to point out that there's the Q&A component on the WebEx system here down to the lower right-hand corner that you can type in your question, and we'll see it pop up here on the screen. Let me start with one that gets into questions about the diesel vehicles and the auctions. And the question is, how do we know that diesel vehicles go through the auction at the same rate as non-diesel? And the questioner hypothesizes that there's a strong likelihood that diesel models aren't sent to auction and are kept on dealers' lots due to their uniqueness. What do you think about that, Bruce?
Well, that could be, but we don't have any proof of that one. We do know that the 30,000 vehicles that we pulled from the auction data, these vehicles did go through auction. So we can, these analysis really can only talk about the vehicles actually that did go through auction. If dealers get them in other ways other than through auction, we really can't address that in this study.
Okay. Thank you. Another question here has to do with depreciation, and it's a very simple one. Do diesel vehicles depreciate differently? And the comment is a rate difference could impact the slide 12 analysis.
Let's go back to slide 12 then. Huh? Do they depreciate? Alan, could you repeat that then?
Yes. Do diesel vehicles depreciate differently? A rate difference could impact this says page 12 analysis. Assuming that meant slide 12.
Yeah, the slide 12 is the auction price. So that's really just what was being sold at auction. So the question is, does the depreciation affect the resale price? So depreciation actually is the subtraction of auction MSRP from the auction price. So I'm a little confused about how they might interact.
Okay. Is it your sense that if you had a gasoline and a diesel side by side, would you see the depreciation on the diesel being different than the gasoline for some reason? Like one would be depreciating the exact same vehicle over a 3-year period at a certain percentage, and the diesel would be at a different rate at a different time at that point.
You mean identical vehicles, same year, same model?
Yeah. I think that's the question that I'm seeing here.
Yeah, and what we're using is the law of large numbers that says if we have large numbers of vehicles, unless there's some systemic differences that we're not aware of, we try to take in the effects of trim level, the effects of obviously fuel price and these kinds of things, but in terms of the depreciation of the MSRP minus the resale value, I'm not sure if I can see the point of the percentage difference at the rate at which they would depreciate. I thought that my understanding is that by using the large numbers of vehicles that we have, it's a sample. It's definitely not a census of all the vehicles, gas versus diesel, for all Jettas, for example. So all we can do is use. We're limited in that we have the issue of Mannheim auctions, which is the largest auction house in the world, but still, we're limited to the vehicles that actually went through Mannheim. And as one of the other people mentioned, if dealers actually hold back, they get them in trade-in or through other trades and keep them and don't go through auction, we really don't know what their value is. But by having a large sample, statistically, we can argue that if we're trying to, as best we can, based on the sample, being representative of, in general, because we have large numbers of the vehicle population.
Okay, and perhaps a related question on that one that we think about here at the DTF occasionally, and that is, how do diesels compare with other alternative powertrains in this? I don't know, have you done any looking at hybrid total cost of ownership and have any, sort of comment on that, how the diesel might fare against some of these other alternative powertrains?
We have not. To really do that, you'd have to have a vehicle that has all three versions. And there aren't too many vehicles that do that. I think there's, the Touareg I think comes in a hybrid version, a diesel version, and a gas version. But I don't think we looked at that at one time. We really haven't made a comparison. To answer your question, we really haven't looked at differences between, say, even gas and hybrids, which would be a reasonable analysis as well. But to actually compare all three, you'd have to have a same version of all three vehicles. And I think the Touareg might be the only one. Do we have diesel hybrid versions of any of these others? I don't see them from the vehicles that we have in front of us.
Right.
So that's what we'd have to do that analysis. But we could do gas versus hybrid. There's enough of those to do. But then you have questions about where does the Prius fit? Is it really a Corolla? That kind of thing. So sometimes it's not easy to compare if they don't have a comparable and an obviously comparable vehicle version.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's see. Do we have other questions coming in?
I see one on the screen here, Alan. Have you done a California breakdown? If so, how does the cost profile look in the state? We have not. We don't have a California breakdown. That would be. We could do it, but I don't know if we'd have enough counts of vehicles that have a statistically reliable analysis. Though California is a huge market, but definitely. So I don't know what the Alan. You probably know better than I. California sales of diesels. How do they?
Yeah, California is actually #1 in total volume of sales for both diesels and hybrid vehicles. So
yeah,
that would be an interesting look, maybe.
Yeah, it is. It's a possibility, but you need some real numbers to actually to be statistically significant and feel like you feel confident in the results.
Absolutely. Other questions? Anyone? There's still time to type those into the Q&A or into the chat space. I wanted to just get your perspective, Bruce.
I see one here. I see one pop up here, Alan.
Okay.
When you computed fuel cost differences over, say, 5 years, are you using the average price of gasoline and diesel for each of the past 5 years? Yes, we are. We're looking at the EIA and say, okay, for that, what model year is that vehicle? And then the 5 years going forward, we look at the EIA average fuel price for regular and for diesel, and then use that as our each. And then again, we also add inflation into those numbers so that everything is in 2013 numbers. So we always try to adjust so that we're always talking about for this particular study up in the 2013 time frame. Alan, did you have a question?
I did. I was just curious. You've done this TCO study now on 2 separate occasions, and I wondered what have you seen change in terms of the major influences? I know that we look at these variables like fuel cost and resale value as being maybe more significant in past points in time and than current time, but comparing the 2 efforts here, looking at TCO involving the diesel, what do you see that this is becoming a more dominant force in that analysis?
Is that the depreciation cost is much less now for diesels than it was in the prior study in general. Fuel cost is always going to be affected by the price of fuel during those times, right? So but we always know diesel has been up to this point always more expensive. So we always expect diesel costs to be fuel costs to be not the fuel cost overall, but the price of fuel to be higher. So they're always going to be diesel makes up for it because they can get better fuel economy out of the diesel fuel. But it's the big difference between this study and the other one is the larger amount of difference between the gas and diesel overall for depreciation. That the diesel depreciates less in general in this study than it did in the other study. In general, there are differences, throughout among certain vehicles, but in general, I thought the values are higher in this study than in the previous study.
Okay, thank you. And I see we have another a follow-up question to the previous question on fuels, and that is, did you do a sensitivity analysis to see what the impact of fuel price volatility was for the two fuels?
We did not. We did not. That's an interesting idea, though. Something that we're always looking at continuous improvement for the study to try to add more value, and this might be one way to do that. So the price volatility was for the two fuels. Yeah, that would be an interesting. You can actually add that as a variable into the analysis, into the fuel price analysis. Yeah, very good. Thank you.
Okay. Looks like we have another question here. It appears that the only way for consumers to, quote, cash in on the diesel advantage would be to purchase the vehicle, not lease. If a consumer leases the vehicle for, say, 3 years, when it's returned to the manufacturer, it seems like the lion's share of the advantage depreciation cost would go to the manufacturer. Yes or no?
They may be right. They may be right there. That with this depreciate, the manufacturer tends to, well, I guess the manufacturer doesn't set up the depreciation rate. They suggest it, and I think companies like ALG and somebody like that tells the loan companies what they think it's going to be over that period of time. Manufacturers have their own idea, and ALG and some of the other companies that do this, that manage this, may think differently. But I think they may be right that it may not be an advantage to lease. But I think that's a good question to look into, though.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Other questions from the audience? We have still have a few minutes left here. Okay. Well, if not, then I want to just offer one more plug for our upcoming second in this series, looking at the value of clean diesel cars, both to the consumer and to society. That will present some research from the MarTech group that was funded by the Diesel Technology Forum. So we hope you might be able to join us for that segment. And let's see, as I mentioned earlier, we do have some other segments coming up in different topical areas, in on and off-road engines and equipment, as well as power generation. So if you have a hankering for any of those topics, feel free to send us an email at dtf@dieselforum.org, and we'll put you on the list. Just a quick reminder that we appreciate you being on today's call, and Bruce, thank you very much for this excellent work. We find it to be very informative, and hope that consumers do the math and understand the value and benefits of this new generation of clean diesel technology. Thank you very much for your work here, Bruce.
You're welcome.
And as a final note to all of our attendees, today's webinar has been recorded, and the presentation that you've just seen will be made available to you tomorrow. We'll be sending it out in an email, and along with a brief survey that will help us tailor these and other kinds of sessions in the future to ones that folks find value in. So with that, I want to say thank you all very much for participating. Thank you again, Bruce, and we'll talk to everyone soon. And have a nice day and a great Labor Day weekend. Thank you.